we'll be talking about Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey framework. And then we're going to reflect on the call to do inner work to grow larger than your challenges, because that's the call. And then we'll have you set an intention to ignite your superpowers. And since we have a small group, we can maybe be a little more leisurely than we might have in an otherwise 30-minute presentation. So feel free to unmute and participate anytime you want. I feel like we have an abundance of chance to interact today. So who am I? I decided to really just take a practical approach to this, and just tell you about like how I came to being pretty much obsessed with this year. I call it the Hero's Journey. I built what would be called an impressive resume or curriculum vitae in higher education, but then my life felt all wrong. And so when I got everything I ever dreamed of, and I checked off the last box on my to-do list for happiness, I thought, oh my God, what have I done? So I had gotten tenure, and that was the last thing. And I said, well, I think I'll just stay where I am. Thank you. You can have that back, which is probably the only person in my university to have ever done that willingly, and stayed on. But that was my call to this, what I say in hindsight is a Hero's journey, where I actually engaged on this path that was screaming at me for years, in search of myself. And I, quite to my surprise, discovered I had a calling. I didn't even realize that was like a thing. I just thought that was something that people wrote about in novels. So I eventually ended up going into, instead of the scientific academic area, I was into administration, and then realized I had a passion for leadership development, professional and personal development. So I went back to school, got a degree in the science of well-being and a bunch of coaching credentials. And I stayed on in the university, but now I'm a nonprofit entrepreneur, whose mission is to help us, find our biggest, highest, our superpower self, in a way that's truly us. And that is so good for our resilience and well-being. And to the degree relevant, to help people remember their calling and to bring their natural gifts to bear. We don't have to be somebody we're not. The world needs us exactly as we are in our hearts and souls. So I'd like to just spend a few moments talking about what I like to call the Hero's Journey. I'll go ahead and review it in case not everybody is as obsessed about it as I am. But it comes from a man named Joseph Campbell, who was a comparative mythologist, who studied the fables, tales, legends, religions, and stories across time and culture. And he said, what are these stories of humanity trying to tell us? And the most pervasive theme across all these stories, he called the hero's journey. Now, I call it the Hero's Journey because Campbell literally, he was a man of his era, unfortunately. And so I try not to judge him with, hindsight and modern sensibilities. But he did say that the hero's journey was not for women. And I completely disagree. So rather than just throwing out his whole body of work, I just like to call it the hero's journey, that there's no gender in what's in our hearts and souls. I mean, so there's been counter narratives, which are great as well. I think his framework works just fine. But what it is he pretty much describes a common narrative. It's the monomyth. It's the one story of humanity. And if you think back to your most beloved epic tales and stories like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, or my favorite, Wizard of Oz, they all have sort of a common storyline. And it's basically goes like this. So the hero is invited to embark on an adventure greater than themselves. And sometimes that might be reluctant to leave the comfort of their home, but they eventually set out and eventually discover like a bad guy or bad gal that's standing in their way. And they do everything they can to rise above, but eventually find themselves with their back up against the wall and no place to go. And this is the turning point in the journey where the Shiro discovers that the only thing they can change is within. And so it goes from being a journey of an external challenge to one of an internal journey where the Shiro has to discover the bigger version of themselves, the one that is larger than their challenge. It's usually about their own self-doubt or their fear or their wounds, something of that nature. It's basically shadow work. And when they do that healing, and then they acquire whatever skills to go along with this new sense of a bigger version of themselves, then they can go and be successful and prevail against their challenge. So they return home, but they return home transformed. And the Shiro's journey is often depicted in this way as a circle, but I would argue that the Shiro actually comes back larger than before. And so if you can imagine that they return and they're an inch off of the screen instead of at that original green dot. And I also believe that they are called again and again, or we are called again and again. And so it's really an upward spiral, not a circle. Okay, so this is the opportunity of the superhero to elevate and get bigger and bigger until we have transcended our fears and wounds and self-limiting beliefs and have become one with the most authentic, luminous version of ourselves. I would just have to say that the opposite is also true. We can also spiral downwards if we refuse the call, if we're in denial, if we don't want to do the inner work, that we want to keep stuck in victimhood or blame mode. So this is what I like. I'm going to focus on this this narrative for the rest of the time we have together. I'm going to use an online learning module that I've developed. It's actually, you're getting a sneak preview because it's not yet published, but it's going to be published on our website at Healing EDU. And so you'll get a little flavor of it. And then when we have the larger course in Empower later, you'll get a copy of it as part of the course. And you can go through it before, during, or after our meetings. So let's see, okay, I think I have to stop share because I'm going to switch over. Sorry, I should have thought of this sooner. Okay, so so this is the first lesson of the Shiro's Journey module. It's discovering your inner Shiro. And so I'd like to spend the rest of the time just doing a few exercises with you, because I've discovered that less is more when it comes to talking in presentations. And what more is more is you getting within, doing your inner work and discovering your biggest, most beautiful self. So I like to start with asking people to identify your personal Shiro archetype. So, archetypes are metaphors and symbols that are deep within our psyche, and they're very powerful tools for our journey. And they were talked about by Carl Jung. So I want to just ask you to think back to your favorite epic film, TV series, graphic novel, novella, or any other form of creative media, but it doesn't have to be fiction. It could be a real life person. And I'm going to skip over some of these exercises because we don't have hours and hours today. But choose a character or characters that resonate most with you. And to think about, in what way does their experience parallel your own life right now, or reflect who you have always been. So I always loved Dorothy, and I just love that she's optimistic and good-hearted, and I feel like that there's a part of me that really resonates with her and her trust and being in relationship always. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to make a few notes for yourself. And then if you have time, what are some of the obvious and not so obvious qualities that you share, and why? Maybe if you could wrap up your thoughts in about a minute. Normally I'd ask you to share, but since we're going to have the Q&A separate, we will leave that part separate. And if you care to share your Shiro exemplar afterwards, that would be great. I'm going to just show you what's next in this slide. We don't have time for this, but I would encourage you, if you have the time and interest afterwards, is to meditate, reflect, write, draw, paint, act out, dance, whatever you want to do, these strengths and weaknesses that make you authentically, unapologetically, and uniquely you. And in what ways are they heroic or have a heroic quality? So to really get in touch with your Shiro avatar, that you feel it in yourself, that you see it and celebrate it, and you elevate it to the front of your consciousness, well above your any victim mentality, if present. Okay, so now I'd like to go to another exercise. And again, I teed up the module so that you don't have to see me scrolling around, but do just want to give you a sense of how pretty it is. It is a storyline format as opposed to, those PDFs and videos that seem like they're constantly pervading a lot of online courses. But anyway, so the part of the journey that I love the most, and I guess if you knew me, you would not be surprised at this, is the part that is the hardest. And that is the part of the innermost cave, that part where the Shiro gets their back up against the wall and realizes they have nowhere else to go. And I love this moment because it is the moment of transformation. It's when they are forced to reckon with the beliefs and practices that got them there and is keeping them stuck. Because it's only when we break open those beliefs, and really it's part of our egoic structures, that we can be bigger, because we are absolutely infinite. We're infinite. And it's only our egos and our fear and our self-limiting beliefs that keep us small and unable to rise to the challenge. So I'd like to spend a little moment on this part of the cave, because it can be tricky. As you can imagine, rock bottom is not most people's favorite place, though it is mine. And when I see that people are at rock bottom, I'm just like, yay, how wonderful. And they think, oh, she's lost her mind on top of it. But it is tricky to navigate. And so I'd like to just spend most of the rest of our time just going through some of my tips of how to walk in the dark. So I think knowing what our tendencies that get us stuck into the innermost cave, I classify as having two flavors. One is quixotic, like tilting at windmills. What are we doing that's pointless over and over again, or counterproductive? And then insufficient agency, like being stuck. Okay, so quixotic pursuits include things like perfectionism. That's a waste of time and energy. Standards too high. And maybe just take notes to yourself if any of these resonate, that you might want to explore later. Self-comparison. That's what social media is all about, and it feeds this quixotic behavior. Trying to control what we have no influence over, or no business trying to control. And similarly, taking responsibility for what we have no control over, or business trying to own. And then just the general mantra, doing the same thing over again and expecting a different outcome. I get so mad at myself when I find myself doing that. Okay, so insufficient agency might come from having too narrow of a comfort zone or vision. Like, I can only see this far ahead of me, or I can't see any other options. Believing life or things should be easy. Life is not easy. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Avoidance or denial of reality or responsibility. So it's the opposite of trying to control everything. It's just giving up. Believing that we cannot learn, grow, or make a difference. Complaining endlessly without moving into empowered action. Playing it too safe or too small. So love to hear from you in the Q&A if any of these resonated. I could write these because I've had a lot of them. So it's only because I've been there that I can really talk about this from experience. Like if I were a tour guide and I want to sell you a trip to London, I've got to go to London, right? Okay, so here are some 4 pearls of wisdom that I find are just staples of my cave walking. So the first is about the enemies and tests that Campbell talked about that often get us into the cave or get us stuck. The one thing they have in common is they tend to make us feel like we're powerless and without control. So even if we're acting and moving and saying things and doing things, oftentimes that is from a place of powerlessness and fear. Okay, so let's not mistake action with feeling empowered. They're not always the same thing. Therefore, the Shero learns how to reclaim their power and focus on their locus of control. Okay, the next pearl of wisdom, perspective. This is, I already mentioned, our beliefs, our self-limiting beliefs, and our fears and wounds. These are the things that determine how we feel, and therefore our choices. Therefore, being willing to change your mind about a belief means that you can change how you feel and what you do. Be open to different perspectives and watch your options grow. I had this argument with a man I dated very briefly. He said, I have no control over my feelings. And it's like, well, that's kind of true, but we couldn't get past that. And I think we just he was really upset at me, and that was the end of it. But we don't have our control over our feeling about a belief, but we can change our belief about a situation. Like believing I'm powerless, or this person is harming me or preventing me from being who I am or need to be. Like I prevent myself. So I can change my belief and say, I have power to be who I am. It may not be, everything I want, but only I decide who I am and what I do and how I view the world and how I feel about it. So again, the innermost cave could just be a terrible, terrible thing, or it could be your place of transformation. Okay, so you can change your mind. Okay, the third one is create your world. Since you can change your belief and your mind and your feelings, and then you are now in charge of how you feel about the world. And so, such as seeing others as enemies is likely to create conflict with them. But if you see them as the ones who will show you where your growth is needed, means you'll better be able to navigate your relationship and yourself and your world more effectively over time. There's a story about the Buddha. I don't remember where I read it, but Buddha would have all these pesky students. And finally, one day somebody said, Buddha, why do you have this really annoying, mean, negative, judgy, complainy, demanding student? And Buddha said, that is not my student. He is my teacher. Okay, so I have to remind myself of that all the time, but it gives me a different frame to finding the solution, which is within me, like to be more peaceful. I don't have to give my peace away to anybody. Finally, knowing what you can control. So sometimes we may have no control over anything but our perspective. So is your perspective creating solutions or resistance? Is it helping you feel more peaceful and empowered, or is it making you feel diminished? Are you judging someone else instead of staying on your path of growth? I sometimes tend to like to overfocus on what other people ought to be doing. It's just a way of me avoiding my own work. And finally, lean in. These tests and enemies enable us, often if we resist them, enable us to avoid the growth that we need. So they're here about teaching us about reclaiming our power and our locus of control. And so I find it really helpful to focus on what do I need to learn to get to the gift. Okay, so hopefully some good pearls there. If you just take one to heart, I would feel like this is a good, a worthwhile session. Okay, so these are some tips for the innermost cave, like specific things you can do. And again, like this is way more than we can cover in much detail. But again, I will just go through them and feel free to take notes or jot down some ideas or inspirations that you might want to follow up with on your own or in the larger course that we'll be offering. So these things were all hard earned and won, and also are from the literature. So this is about learning and growing. My challenge is here because there's something I need to learn and grow from. And when I do that, I can move past my challenges. This includes moving beyond the difficult others in my life. They're my teachers. They're showing me where my growth is needed. Another empirically tested strategy is just having gratitude. Like even just having a gratitude journal and having a little time every day to be grateful is very healthy and helpful for your well-being, and especially during challenging times. I have inner wisdom. You have everything you need inside of you. And the trouble is our minds can get so judgy and overwhelmed. And so just going within and getting beneath all the noise in our head and getting into our heart and into our soul, we can find our inner truth, our deepest wisdom. And I feel like this is what's missing in the world, is that we are we're enslaved by our thoughts, which are really negative and judgy. And we are ignoring our hearts and our souls, which are showing us what I feel is the right path for what we need individually and for the collective. This one can be hard, but being really in the exquisitely present. So in this microsecond, if your house isn't burning, your house isn't burning down, and if you're not bleeding, then you have everything you need in this moment. You're here breathing the air of our beautiful earth, and you're fine in this moment. And believe me, there were times where I had to really take that microsecond at a time. Also, we briefly talked about this. I decide my perspective. My beliefs are under my control, and they determine how I feel and therefore my actions. So I can change my mind. Changing your mind is so powerful. Again, seeing enemies and tests as your vehicles, your invitations for growth, can change everything. And I only have control over myself. When I quit trying to fix other people, wow, I had all this energy for healing myself. Oh my gosh, it's amazing how that works. It's so simple. It's so simple. And investing my energy and my commitment and my peace of mind and my sense of empowerment can really pay off over time. I love myself. I used to be a perfectionist, and the thoughts in my head were abusive, and I believed them all. And so I finally just decided that I can just love being imperfectly human, which is what all of us ever are. And that also leaves room for growth and nuance, which I'm so grateful for, because if we were perfect, we would not be growing at all. We would just die, just like most of my houseplants. We're a work in progress, and we can be proud of the progress we make during our lifetimes. I am not in denial. I want to view my world with clarity. If the bill collector's knocking at my door, if my loved one is saying I'm not happy, or I'm scared, I feel sick, I get a bad review from my supervisor, like I want to be really clear about what my situation is, and so that I can make the best choice possible. and stay present. Because when I move into fear mode, then it's just reaction, not helpful. Okay, and I'm here to learn and grow. So I'm not perfect. I'm here to learn and grow. I can rise above this. I can exit this cave and prevail. We have to believe we can do it. Otherwise, we'll just stay there stuck in the downward spiral. Okay. So that's it for that. I wanted to, let's see, oops. I gotta go back to my slide. Okay, so the Zoom thing like blocks your buttons. Okay, so we have time to do a little meditation, Tiffany? Yeah, okay. All right, so I would like you to, if you're interested and willing, to just do a little guided meditation with me. And we're going to go find our inner wisdom right now. And maybe you're already good at this, in which case, well, it wouldn't hurt to do it again. And if you feel like you could use some practice in it, then good. I hope you find this helpful and it's something you can return to. But spend a moment thinking, just a moment to think, what insight are you seeking now? Like if you're going to go look for inner wisdom, what insight are you looking for? So I'll give you just a minute or a few seconds to think of an intention. And when you're ready, just have your seat firmly grounded on what you're sitting on, your feet flat on the floor. Try to make your spine as straight as possible and feel the top of your head pointing straight up at the ceiling. So try to get it right over your spine so your spine is as straight as possible. And take a deep breath. And I want you to visualize your head as this sphere sitting on top of your neck. And imagine all of your thoughts and mind chatter as kind of like a TV screen in your head. And imagine your skull all the way around it, containing it. None of that chatter is going to go anywhere. It's going to just stay there, and your screen is going to freeze. Beneath all of that thinking is your observer. It's the consciousness deep within you. You may feel it in your chest. You may feel them in your belly or your hips. This is the deep part of you that is wise, infinite, luminous, and authentically you. This part of you has no access right now to that screen full of information. You can go back to it later if you need, but right now, this deep part of you is wanting to have a conversation. Feel that deep part of you in your torso and in your arms, your hips, your legs, your neck, even around your skull, your scalp. Like that energy infuses your whole body. You might feel your wisdom there. Now, with your intention in mind, ask that deep part of you to provide some insight or some knowing. You might hear a whisper of a few words, or a visual, a feeling, or just a sense of knowing. And when you're done receiving your message, thank yourself for your wisdom and insight. Thank your heart and soul for their guidance. And if you wish, to ask them to step forward and be more present in your consciousness, so that has at least equal say to the chatter in your mind, you may ask it to do so. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and return to the Zoom room. Hey, normally I would ask you how that went, but we'll save that for the Q&A. So I'm going to just pause for a minute and let you spend a moment writing an intention for deepening your journey, and then we'll wrap it up there and switch over to Q&A. So just take a minute or two. Okay, so just in summary, that the Chiro's Journey Timeless Framework invites us to the solutions and growth within to solve the challenges of our life, our organization, and our era. And reframing our beliefs can help you prevail. So thank you for this opportunity again, and you're being such good listeners and engaging with the content, and I'll just end it there.